What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? The Chiefs make two massive moves to free up cap space for 2025. Today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark, founder of Chiefs Corner. You can find my work over at Chiefs Corner. There is a lot to talk about. We're going to get into it here in just a couple of minutes, but I do have an article out on Chiefs Corner talking about this specific situation, the salary cap, how it all affects Kansas City and what they're going to be doing this season. Later on, we're going to be talking about what could be left for Kansas City. What could they be looking at doing that is still to come based on what they've done so far? Next segment, we're going to be talking about how it will affect this season and what it's looking for going forward for that. But we're going to kick this off with talking about Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, who both had restructures done on their contract, and what it's going to mean for this Chiefs team this season. And if you haven't already, go join our insider text line at 816-357-8781. I got this message out to the insiders, the locos on that line much earlier today before we were able to get this show recorded. All right, I will be taking a couple of questions later. If you all have cap questions, you can put those in the comment section, and I will be getting to those here in a little bit. But let's break down what actually happened today. Salary cap and the free agency. That is what we're going to be talking about on all this. And right before we started, it broke that the Chiefs have tendered Najee Johnson and Christensen, the linebacker. So both of those guys are tendered. Jack Cochran, I apologize. They are going to be back in Kansas City. At least that's the way it's looking. Those are both going to count about $3.2 million against the salary cap for this season, unless somebody offers them more. So right now, my numbers from a little earlier today are a little bit off. They had about $33 million in cap space. That doesn't include Nick Bolton. That doesn't include Elijah Mitchell, and that does not include Christian Fulton, because we do not have those numbers yet. We know the basic parameters of the deal, but the fact that it's taken this long to get those actual numbers means that there's probably more to the contract, and I would imagine that those numbers are going to come in a little bit less than what people were talking about and expecting to begin with. But when we start looking at what this is going to mean for Kansas City, what happened today with Patrick Mahomes? Well, going into today, Mahomes had a cap number of $66 million for 2025. Ryan and I have talked about this all offseason, said this isn't going to happen. He's not going to be playing under this cap number. We know that. They're going to do some kind of restructure. I didn't expect them to do this type of restructure. I expected them to make a restructure, maybe free up $20 million, and they would, go on down their road and maybe free up some more with Chris Jones, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But what has been reported is that Mahomes converted $47.7 million in salary and a roster bonus that he had due to a signing bonus, which for cap purposes in 2025 spreads out to 25 all the way through 29, because you can prorate it for up to 5 years. The move lowered Mahomes' 2025 salary cap number by $38.2 million. That is massive. That is just on Patrick Mahomes alone. That is a massive, massive number. Now, it does have an effect in the future. It's going to add about $10 million, $9.5 really, each season from 2026 through 2029 on top of his salary cap that he already has. That's going to leave him close to $80 million in 2026, $80 million in 2027. That's something that the Chiefs are going to have to deal with, and we will get down that rabbit hole once we need to. But for the moment, the Chiefs have created all this cap space, and now they're sitting here with close to $28 million in cap space. Obviously, I think Nick Bolton is going to come in probably $7, $8, maybe $9 million, so you could probably take that down to about 20. Elijah Mitchell, it's up to $3.5 million is his deal, so I would guess it's probably closer to maybe 1.5 to 2, which would mean you'd still be at about probably 8. Let's just call it $18 million in cap space. And then when you look at Christian Fulton, it's a 2-year deal worth $20 million. So it could be as much as $10 million in year one, salary cap wise? I don't imagine it's going to be. I imagine it's going to be a little bit lower. So let's go with $8 million. That would give you about $10 million in cap space still available. And that is before you start talking about what is going to possibly happen with Trey Smith in the future. We'll get to that here in a little bit and how it's going to affect this season and some other changes that could come from it as well. But that is what they did with Patrick Mahomes. The other thing that they also did is they lowered Chris Jones's cap number. Chris Jones came into today with a cap number of over $35 million. And today he had $15 million from a roster bonus converted into a signing bonus for salary cap purposes in 2025. The move reduced Jones's 2025 salary cap number by $11.25 million and increased his cap number by $3.75 million in each of the next 3 seasons because he only has 3 seasons left on his contract past 2025. So he's going to have a large cap number, looks like $44 million in 2026, $38 million in 2027, and $45 million in 2028. That's kind of how it's going to go. Kansas City has made a ton of cap room available. They probably need about 6 or 7 million to probably sign their draft class. The key here, though, is they are now in a position where they don't have to make another move to get and play under what they have right now. They can probably make it work by maybe doing another small restructure if they absolutely need cap room closer to season when you have to actually have all of your players under the cap. But right now, if Trey Smith doesn't get a deal done, they can play with him. They can go with $23.4 million on the cap for his number in 2025. I don't think that's going to happen. From everything that I had heard, they were feeling very confident that they were going to get a deal done with Trey Smith. And if that happens, his number goes from 23.4 to probably closer to 8, maybe 9. So I'm going to just call it about a $15 million savings to get his salary cap number off of 2025. So if you look at that, Kansas City could be going into the season with close to $22 million. Well, close to, I'd say $20 million in cap space, depending on how things shake out the rest of the year and who they sign. Now, I do think that there's some other deals that are getting done. 2 of the ones that I just talked about, and Najee Johnson and Jack Cochran, just happened. Those are both $3.2 million a piece. So it took a little bit of the originally 33, now it's down to 28. And again, I still think that number is closer to probably, I would say probably 11, 12, but I'm going to go with 10 for right now at this point. After the Nick Bolton contract, after Elijah Mitchell, and after you look also at the Christian Fulton signing. So are there more moves to make? How does it affect Kansas City going forward and what they could be doing going into the 2025 NFL draft coming up next? Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. I personally love Monarch Money. I've been using it about 6 or 7 months now. I have just absolutely loved the interface. It is so easy to use. I enter all my information and I can see when are my bills coming up that are going to be paid in the next couple of days. When, what's my budget every single month? Where's my money going? What are my investments doing? What is my net worth? I can see that on my phone at my fingertips on a daily basis. It is amazing. I absolutely love it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So what does this mean for Kansas City? How is it going to affect the 2025 season? What are they going to do with what they have left? At this point, you're looking at a situation where with about $10 million left that they have, they can probably go and sign some guys like maybe a Derek Nottie, like maybe a Mike Pennell. Those guys both accounted for about $1.2 million in cap space last year because they were on basically vet minimum deals. The big thing on those is with the way that the salary cap is working right now, it's only the top 51 contracts. So you're only going to be adding what is over the top 51 or what is over the bottom contract to your salary cap right now until the regular season, until they have to get to the regular season rosters back or down in September, or late August or September. So at this point, you're talking about maybe adding about $500,000 of a loss of salary cap space to sign both of those guys back. I would imagine that both of those guys are going to be back, or at least one of them will be back for 2025. That gives them a little bit more depth at that position, which is definitely something they need. I'm not saying that they can't go out and draft somebody. I think that they still need to focus on defensive tackle in the draft, and we'll talk a lot more about that in the coming weeks. But I do think that that's one of the things that's probably going to happen with some of this money. The other thing that could possibly happen with some of this money is it's possible to bring a guy like Carson Wentz back. Carson Wentz cost almost $3 million against the cap last year. Is it possible it's not Carson Wentz? Yeah, it's possible. Maybe they'll look somewhere else for a veteran. Maybe Carson Wentz is going to get an opportunity to go somewhere else and get some playing time and start. That's a possibility, but it would not shock me to see Kansas City take some of this money that they just freed up to bring a guy like Carson Wentz back. Maybe they're able to get something done with Charles Omenihu. I know he probably wants to come back to Kansas City. He's not going to have a great market because he didn't play a ton last year. There's lots of different things that they can do with the amount of money that they have still available. And there is one other guy that they could take money from. I don't think it's the best scenario for them or the smarter thing to do, but they still could restructure Jawan Taylor if they absolutely needed money. But the key, and this is what I said before, the key is Trey Smith. If they get Trey Smith under a contract, his cap number is going to drop by almost $15 million. That frees up your ability to have more than, probably $6 or $7 million available for the season, which generally speaking, the Chiefs will go into the season with about $4 million in cap space available. And so that would leave you a lot of money that you could either use this year or you could carry it forward to help with some of the cap stuff next year that you're going to have to be dealing with. Because like I said, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, both of their deals are going up in 2026, one by $9 million, the other by almost $4 million. So at that point, I do think that I don't know that they're done shopping. I think it's going to matter who's available and who do they want to bring in. The other guy that's not on this list is Robert Tonyan, but he was here the very end of last year, so I can't imagine that his number is going to be anything that's going to cause them a lot of money lost. He isn't a guy that's going to get a big contract at this point, so I would imagine it's only going to be a couple $100,000 difference on the salary cap. So when you start looking at what the Chiefs are going to need going forward, Christian Fulton, which I know Ryan and Matt had a chance to talk about this yesterday. I just want to say I love the signing. They can play Christian Fulton outside. They can play Jalen Watson outside, and they can move Trent McDuffie inside when he is or when they go to the nickel. And I think that's a fantastic area for this team. And I think that putting Christian Fulton in this defense is really going to help this roster, and it's going to help solidify that corner position. So I love that pickup. And the best part about it is it really frees up what they could be doing in the draft. I mean, you look at this situation, they now have a starting left tackle. Most reports are reporting that Kingsley Suamati is probably going to be the starting left guard. So you would think that they already have that pretty much handled and taken care of. They have their starting offensive line now at this point. Hollywood Brown's going to be back. Xavier Worthy is going to be back. Rashee Rice will be back at some point. You have your starting 3 wide receivers. You have a starting tight end, although you could really use a better backup maybe, or somebody that can maybe start taking some of what Kelsey does off his plate that Noah Gray can't do. But your offense is pretty much set. You also have Elijah Mitchell, who is a speed back that gives you a change of pace that you don't have in Isaiah Pacheco. So I do think the offense is pretty set right now at this point. You're going to be looking at some depth pieces that could be coming in. I do think that they could be signing a defensive tackle. I do think that there's different guys that they could be bringing in. Maybe it's going to be a situation where Omenihu isn't finding the market that he was hoping to find in free agency, and he does end up back in Kansas City on a prove-it deal. That would be the best case scenario for Kansas City in that regard, because it gives you another defensive end that can help you and can contribute. There's another option, and we will talk about that in the next segment, because I do think it's going to be more about a future focus than really about this year. But there are several different things that they are leaving themselves open to be able to do because of the moves that they've made, because of freeing up almost $50 million in cap space. I knew it was going to be big. I didn't think it was going to be that massive. And with Trey Smith still to go, I mean, you're talking about basically having close to maybe 25 million in cap space available still in some way, shape, or form. I think that puts you in a position where there's lots of different things you can do. Maybe you start looking at some of your own guys that will be free agents next year, and we're going to talk about that here in this next segment because I do think that that's possibly what they're going to be earmarking some of this money for. When you look at how it's going to affect 2025, I do think that they're still looking for defensive tackles. Maybe if they find somebody out there that they like in the wide receiver market, they can bring him in. I don't expect that they're going to bring in a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, although I think he could be in Kansas City when training camp starts. I don't think that happens before the draft. I think Kansas City is going to focus that position specifically on the draft unless they find something that they didn't expect to be there and then get it for a great value. Juju, I don't think is going to have many suitors, so I would expect if he comes back, it's going to be on a very, very limited contract. So when you look at this, Kansas City's offense, I think looks in pretty good shape. You don't have a backup quarterback. Bringing Carson Wentz back makes sense in that regard. If he doesn't have a market, maybe they're looking for another, backup. We'll see, but that's also something that could be done in the next couple of weeks is they could be looking for another QB. But they have a lot of different ways that they can go with all the cap space that they just created. Again, the big thing to me is that they made such a huge move. They have adjusted Mahomes' contract in the past. They've taken, $20 million, $25 million, but they've never done anything quite like they've done with almost $40 million that they pushed forward. And next year is going to be just about as much probably because he's got a cap number of 80 million. So at some point they're going to have to redo that contract. And that is something that we will have to talk about later. Don't have to worry about that right now, but it is something that we're going to have to discuss because it is going to be something that they're going to have to look at in the future. And when we get back, I'm going to talk about what could be left, what could they be looking at, and why get all this extra cap space coming up next. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get into the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There are so many things to go look at with FanDuel. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com right now and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, so we will be getting to questions. I've got a couple of marked that I will be getting into a little bit later. But for right now, let's just get down into what could be left. As I said, I think that they could be bringing a couple guys back. They could be bringing back Derek Nottie. They like Derek Nottie. It would be a cheap re-signing. It would give them even more flexibility in the draft because they wouldn't be stuck necessarily needing a defensive tackle. So that wouldn't shock me if they bring back a guy like Derek Nottie. Maybe a Mike Pennell. That would make sense as well. But I think what they really could be looking for, and like I just said the last segment as well, Charles Minihue would also make a lot of sense in Kansas City. But it wouldn't shock me to look at 2025 and say, okay, next year in 2026, we have Trent McDuffie that is going to be a free agent. George Karlaftis that will be a free agent. Leo Chanel will be a free agent. All three of those guys are guys that you probably want back on this roster. Jalen Watson is going to be a free agent. Could you take some of the money that you just freed up to try to sign those guys to a long-term deal? I would not be shocked. Now, granted, McDuffie and Karlaftis still have their fifth-year options that I expect Kansas City is going to pick up, so they'll basically have them for 2 more years. But the biggest key that I saw last year that really stuck out to me was they went and they signed Creed Humphrey after 3 years. They took a chance and signed him earlier than they absolutely had to, and I think it saved him probably a couple $1 million a year. Creed still reset the center market, but I think the center market would have gone up even further, obviously, with the cap going up, if they had waited until this year to try to sign him. And then they're in a situation where they're trying to bid on Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith at the same time, which I don't think would have worked out for him. At this point, I think you try to get a deal done with Trent McDuffie. You look at it, and he is going to be the guy that is going to demand the most money that is left on this team from that draft class, and he is going to get a massive payday. J.C. Horn just got a big payday. You look at Pat Surtain Jr. just got a big payday. Those two guys, they're setting the corner market. Trent McDuffie, I think, is another guy that would make a lot of sense. And if you sign him now and you get some of that signing bonus going out now, it helps you in the future. So I do think that it's possible that they're looking at that and trying to go that direction, trying to free up space and trying to get it to where they can, sign a guy like Trent McDuffie that they want to keep in Kansas City long term, because I do think they want him here long term, and keep him here. Brian Cook's another guy that is a free agent in after this next season. So lots of different guys, lots of different ways that they could spend some of this extra money. And it doesn't take a ton of money to be able to extend some of those guys. You look at some of the contract numbers and some of the base salaries for guys like Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie's cap number is 2.6. George Karlaftis is 2.3. Let's see. I'm sorry. Trent McDuffie is 4.4, almost 4.5. George Karlaftis is 3.8. I apologize, looking at the wrong column. That was the guaranteed salary that they still have left that I was saying, so I do apologize on that. You also are looking at, Brian Cook has a $1.9 million salary cap number, and the other one that I listed was, where is he? Where's Chanel at? I am not. Oh, there he is. 3.6. So Chanel has 3.6, Karlaftis McDuffie 3.8 and 4.5, basically respectively, and Brian Cook at 1.9. So Brian Cook, if you sign him to a long-term deal, he's the one you're going to add the most salary to probably on this, because you're going to give him a signing bonus that's going to take his number up. Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis both have salaries that are pretty small, so I would imagine that probably stays about the same. They have a guaranteed their base salary. They could lose both about $1 million, about $1 million, probably $1.2 million, $1.3 million maybe on both of them. Leo Chenal has a $3.3 million salary, so his is a little bit higher. So you could definitely bring that down and give it to him in some sort of a signing bonus if you do an extension. What I'm really getting at is if you go back and you look at Creed Humphrey from last year, Creed Humphrey's number in 2024 was, I believe, around $4 or $5 million. And it really didn't change when they signed into a long-term deal. So when you look at what it could be, is they could be looking at some of this money and saying, okay, we're going to take some of the money that we have in his salary, we're going to give it to him in a signing bonus, and we're going to use that as his signing bonus. He got like $18.3 million in signing bonus, basically, or an $18 million signing bonus, basically, for Creed Humphrey. So that's $3 million a year, $3.6 million a year out over 5 years. If they do something like that with some of these players, you're looking at raising their salary maybe $2 or $3 million. That's an easy way to get rid of some of the space and get you set up for a better future with some of these players. Let's get to some of the questions, because I do know that there are a couple of them out there. Let's see. Let's go with Michael Donegan. Who has a bigger impact, Mitchell or Remigio? I do think it's going to be Mitchell. I think that what he brings to this roster, what he brings to this team, is going to be the speed and his ability to really change things coming out of the backfield. I think that could be a huge benefit for this offense. I don't know that Remigio is going to have a huge impact on offense. He could have a huge impact on special teams. The fear that I have had with Remigio, based on what I saw last year, was he struggled holding onto the ball. He fumbled a couple times, didn't really lose it very often, but that's going to be something he has to work on, but definitely a dangerous returner. So I think that Mitchell should be a guy that could have more impact than a Remigio. This is really the question of the day for a lot of people is, do you see Cooper Kupp? Do you see the Chiefs bringing in Cooper Kupp, and what D-line free agency can we bring in? I don't see Kansas City getting Cooper Kupp. not because I don't think that they would like to get Cooper Kupp. I think that they would love to. The question is he willing to play for what they can afford to pay him? He's not going to get a deal that would pay him $20 million a year here. Could they pay him, a Hollywood Brown type deal? Yeah, they could. It's a little bit harder with the incentives for Cooper Kupp than it was for Brown, because Cooper played a lot most of last season. But they could pay him something like that. But is he willing to play on something where he's only going to only be guaranteed $5-6 million and play basically for a chance to go to the championship? Maybe that's what he's after. If that's all he's after, then I absolutely think that's possible. But that's the big question: is that what he's after? Looks like they gave Brown $3.35 million base salary, prorated signing bonus of $3 million, guaranteed salary of $3.5 million. So yeah, I mean, they're on the hook for Brown for about $5-6 million. And could they do that for Cooper Kupp? Yeah, they have the ability to do it right now. Will they? I don't see that happening, because I don't think Cooper Kupp is going to be willing to play for that. I think he's going to go to another team that has more cap space. But it's just a question of where he wants to play. Does he want to play in Kansas City? Does he want to play with Patrick Mahomes? If he does, imagine that offense. Imagine Cooper Kupp with Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice when he comes back. That would be a phenomenal offense to watch. And that doesn't even take into account Travis Kelce or any draft picks that I think that they're going to be making at the position. So I do think that while Kansas City would be interested, I don't think that there's going to be any reality that it could possibly happen, mainly just because I think Cooper Kupp is going to price himself out of what Kansas City could really afford. When it comes to defensive line, they can try several different guys. I haven't really looked at who's left on the list right now. Sorry, and I don't want to sit here and piece through it as I'm live right now. I will try to get something out in the coming day on Twitter, who I think that they could go for. I apologize on that. But I do think the defensive line is going to be something they're looking at. I don't know that they're going to be able to get much done at defensive end unless it's somebody that wants to play on a lesser contract for a chance to chase a ring, like an Aminihu, or somebody that thinks that they have something they could prove, like an Aminihu. But I do think that they could bring some of their own guys back. And I also will say I completely agree with this from Michael Donegan. Veach has officially invoked best player available draft mode for draft. I do think that. I do think that at this point, they're in a situation where they can do whatever they want in the draft. They don't have a horrible specific need that they absolutely have to fill. Do they have needs? Yes. Would it be great to come out of the draft with a future left tackle, franchise left tackle? Yeah, absolutely. And I say that even with the left tackle they signed, because I do think that it's possible that if they found somebody, they could draft him, sit him for a year, and let him play next year and be the backup this year and be the guy that flip-flops if there are injuries. So I think that's possible. Do I think that they also could be looking at another wide receiver? Possibly. I think that's always going to be a possibility. Defensive tackle makes a ton of sense in round one. If there's somebody that drops within the range, they absolutely need defensive tackle help. Corner wouldn't surprise me, even though it looks like they have 3 strong corners, because that's always a premium position. And defensive end is always going to be something that they need. George Karlaftis is going to be a free agent after 2025. Like I said, I do think they pick up his 5th-year option. So I think they have an extra year of him, but that's something to watch. Is they're going to need more pieces at the defensive end position to be able to get after the passer. So lots of different things that they could possibly do in the draft. Really looking forward to seeing what they do going forward. But they made some absolutely massive moves salary cap wise that were absolutely needed to do. And this tells me that they're going to be pushing things a little bit more than they have in the past, because generally speaking, this isn't the type of move that Kansas City would make this early on. They did it knowing that this sets them up to where they don't have to get a deal done with Trey Smith. That gives them leverage in the Trey Smith negotiation. And I do think that kind of says where the negotiations are. If they felt great about it and they thought they were about to get a deal done, I don't think that they would have taken this massive restructure that they just did with Mahomes' number. But they had to get something done with Mahomes to free up enough space to be able to do things. And by taking as much as they did, they gave themselves the leverage to be able to play Trey Smith on that 1-year deal if they absolutely have to. So that is a smart move on Veach's part. Let me know in the comments who you think that they could be going after. Let me know who you want to see them try to get with the available dollars that they have left. I'm really looking forward to, and I will have it out as soon as I get it on Chiefs Corner, the information about Nick Bolton's contract, Elijah Mitchell's contract, and Christian Fulton, because all of that is going to play into what Kansas City has available going forward. Thank you for listening today, and we will be back to talk to you tomorrow.